Okay, let's go.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the first IUCN annual update on nature-based solutions. My name is Leigh-Ann Hurt and I work with the Business and Biodiversity program at IUCN. Last year on this day, we launched the global standard for nature-based solutions, and it's hard to believe a whole year has gone by. Many of you have engaged on nature-based solutions during this past year, joining trainings, events, and even the user groups to provide important feedback and different aspects of NBS. During these interactions, IUCN experts have been asked about a number of topics related to the NBS concept and to the global standard. And these inputs and questions have been useful in informing IUCN's priorities and responses. It is important for us to ensure that we keep NBS relevant, relatable, and especially responsive to the needs of the potential users, governments, communities, businesses, so that we can truly leverage its potential. So today, we're doing something slightly different. We have a panel of colleagues who have been on the front line of NBS, and they're going to discuss the various aspects that they're working on. Our goal today is to give you a quick update on the rollout of the global standard, and since it was launched last year, and to share some progress, as well as the upcoming plans to support its further development. For example, some of the questions we get asked all the time: what type of research and advocacy work is IUCN undertaking to advance NBS? Will there be an NBS certification scheme? Is there any technical assistance available to help governments and non-state actors apply the global standard? But before we answer all these questions, I think it would be best to start with an overview. So I'm going to invite Radhika Murti, who is the director who's been driving a lot of this work, to please give us a rundown of some of the big achievements and also some of the challenges perhaps that you faced this past year. Over to you, Radhika.
Thank you, Leigh-Ann. And thanks to everybody for joining us. I guess many of you have been part of this journey in the last year. So it's fantastic for us to have you on this session with us. And we also hope that you've brought along friends, because we really want to actually expand this growing network of colleagues who we can work with, who engage with us and help us really move NBS to scale across the world. So as Leigh-Ann said, I'm Radhika Murti. I'm the director for IUCN's Global Ecosystem Management Program, and I had the privilege of leading the processes and the consultation processes and the development and drafting of the standard. A year feels so long ago, but you know, it's because so much has happened. And I think when we were in the last stages of drafting this, that's when we all started working from home, went into lockdown, but the group of us were so focused because we were so convinced that there is something there. Finally, we have something that is that could really prove itself to be the new sustainable development model. And we weren't wrong. You responded to that. You actually responded in a way where it was so overwhelmingly positive. So many of you have joined our events. We've done maybe more than 100 webinars and seminars and bilateral meetings over the last year. So many of you have joined our user group. It's still growing. We have about 700 people right now from 100 or so countries. And also donors have been engaging with us, wanting to understand NBS. We've trained their different ministries. We've trained various donor missions around the world. So really there's engagement from donors, and then companies, many companies working very closely with colleagues like Giulia, making sure we understand nature-based solutions, we're on the same page, and that, you know, it's not just new loose language with which we can brand anything and everything, but it actually is grounded in a scientific definition, one that has academic literature that's rapidly growing. Just in the last 3-4 years, we've actually had over 8,000 articles published, many of them quoting IUCN's definition, and then going beyond that definition to see that there is a global benchmark in the form of the standard. So it's been really rewarding for us to launch the standard. And so far it's been translated into numerous languages: Russian, Chinese, Albanian, Thai and Vietnamese coming on board very soon, Japanese, Chinese I mentioned. So it's really good to see this uptake. We still track the downloading. It's become one of the most downloaded documents IUCN's produced so far in its history, which we're very happy about because we can really see its relevance and its reach. Now, the relevance and reach also makes it quite complex in terms of having a common language, having the same understanding. So we really hope you continue to engage with us so we can move forward on this journey with an absolute same kind of understanding so that we can apply NBS around the world in a consistent way, no matter where. So thank you, Leigh-Ann. I think I'm going to stop there, and there'll be more, I'm sure, that my colleagues will share.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Radhika. It certainly has been a busy year, and I've seen how everybody personally has taken it up within IUCN as well, both within the Secretariat, within our membership, and within the commissions. And I think the commission that helped co-create the global standard, the Commission on Ecosystem Management, has certainly played an important role. And today we have Emmanuelle Cohen, who is dialing in, I think, from Washington, just back to Washington. And Emmanuelle, it'd be great if you could tell us a little bit, please, about the leadership role that the Commission has played in the development of the global standard, and also how the Commission's research is continuing to help inform its uptake.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Leigh-Ann. So the IUCN Commission on Ecosystem Management, or CM, I want to underline, first of all, that it's really a work that we've done as a team. There's the chair, Angela Andrade, who is also a counselor of IUCN, and myself, I'm leading the thematic group on nature-based solutions. But there are several experts that are leading thematic groups that are relevant to different aspects of NBS, such as ecosystem restoration, governance, policy, cultural diversity, adaptation, ecosystem adaptation, resilience, and so on. So it's really a work that we've co-developed with the Secretariat as a team. So I would say that we have, yes, this complementary expertise has really helped strengthen the scientific aspects and basis of the global standard. And what we have done in the past year, I would say at CM as a team, both in research and different aspects, are we've worked on several online events, about 50 actually we've counted with the entire team, and over 50 relevant webinars, workshops that we have either organized or led in different regions of the world. We have presented the global standard in different types of fora to different regions, different types of stakeholders, in different types of contexts, also with regards with exchanging with different sectors and different types of practitioners also. And with regards to research, as you've asked me, I would say that, well, first of all, we have been also training, that this is something interesting also. We've been helping in training different students, and by supervising also students in some of their research projects. But then we've also worked, or we've I would say, because NBS and the nature-based solution standard, as Radhika mentioned, is very much context specific, and it's supposed to be relevant to different types of contexts, whether it's social context or geographic context or ecological context. We've been working on different aspects, and we're developing aspects such as nature-based solutions and the link to protected areas, or nature-based solutions in international policy, or the link between nature-based solutions and young professionals, or nature-based solutions and protected, or I mentioned it already, or the ecosystem approach, and so forth. So I gave you a little bit of an update on what we've done and how, and the type of research that we've put forward and explored in the past year.
Thank you, Emmanuelle. That's really interesting. I'm just wondering, are there any gaps that have been identified that the Commission and maybe your peers are also working on? That, because I think also NBS is a concept that's still being challenged quite a bit. And, how do we get it right? So I was just wondering if there's any of the research projects that you're working on specifically that look at some of the gaps that have been identified.
Well,
or that you're planning to address, maybe going forward?
Yes. Well, I would say that, yes, of course, there are a lot of research gaps, and there are a lot of researchers all over the globe that are now, have you seen, I mean, research has been evolving extremely fast in the past few years. But I would say that because we are, part of the IUCN, and we're looking into, again, specifically we're concentrating our efforts on the global standard. We're looking at how to adapt the global standard in the different context, ensuring that there is no misunderstanding and avoid any misunderstanding with regards to other type of context concept that are related to NBS. So like the concepts that I've mentioned earlier. And in addition, as you asked, with regards to future points or future plans that we have and that we could address, I would say that one thing that is really well, first of all, the CM will be central, or will continue to be central in the standard, having the CM chair chairing also the International Standard Committee. So this is one thing. But then with regards to the governance structure in general, because we have the strong links with the users, and we have the feedback coming from the users, I think that a lot of the needs that will be coming from people using and implementing the standard in those different contexts will help address or help identify, help direct our research gaps and priorities. And then just to finish my points, I would say that some of the points that we as CM could be working on will be the review of the standard, revising the standard, periodically, again, very much based on the feedback that we'll be getting from the users, from different offices, from of course, our expert at the secretariats, then maybe help also develop projects or monitoring and assessment that will be beyond the self-assessment report, helping also advising on how we can collect the data, that metadata that is being produced, and is so important in knowing how to improve the standard further and having better practice, and help designing a maybe a data management system. Yeah, so I think that's it, more or less.
Well, that's a lot. So well, thank you very much for sharing all that. And one thing that fascinates me, you mentioned several times the users. I think that's one thing everybody wants to hear more about. How is the standard being applied? And one of our colleagues who's online with us, James, has been on the front line in that regard, helping some early movers in the UK actually apply the global standard and undertake this assessment. So James, can I ask you to please tell us more about that?
Sure, thanks, Leigh-Ann. Welcome everybody, it's a pleasure to be connected today. So in January this year, we began working with the Environment Agency, some of our members, partners, to support a pipeline of projects in England to apply the standard. So to establish, first of all, a short list of proposals, we launched a call under the Environment Agency Strategic Catchment Partnerships. We received 24 really, really fantastic expressions of interest from, diversity ecosystems, forests, wetlands, peatlands, coastal marine ecosystems. Obviously, we didn't have the capacity to support all 24 in the beginning. So we began really by looking at, trying to define selection criteria, ranging, from different actions, coordinated actions with farmers across landscape to large-scale wetland creation restoration. And we shortlisted 5 projects for the early application of the standard in the run-up to the World Conservation Congress, COP26, trying to prioritize this time to really get some deep learning from these initial first 5 early applications in the UK. So just give a very quick summary, in West Sussex, the Medmerry Managed Realignment Scheme. This was initiated by the Environment Agency and RSPB. McBreen is one of the, if not the largest managed realignment of the open coast in Europe. Includes a landscape scale nature reserve, which RSPB continues to manage together with the local community. Up in Rotherham in the north of England, the Centenary Riverside from the Sheffield and Rotherham Wildlife Trusts is transformed one of the largest steel foundries in the area into a wetland reserve that also protects industrial and residential areas nearby today, whilst continuing to be a wildlife haven. And down in the southern coast, the Sussex Kelp Restoration Project is a kelp bed rewilding project from the Sussex Wildlife Trust. And in Cambridge to the east, the Great Fen Project is restoring lowland peatland and wetland. That's with the Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Northamptonshire, the Wildlife Trust. And up in the Lake District National Park in Cumbria, Hawes Water Reserve, it's an upland farming project developed by RSPB, which delivers water quality and biodiversity benefits. And this is a partnership with the landowner, United Utilities, which is Northwest England's largest water company, supplies over 3 million homes and businesses with water, wastewater services. And most of the land within, of the land managed by RSPB United Utilities is on the catchment of the Hawes Water Reservoir, which is the single largest source of drinking water in Northwest England. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, well, I'm absolutely also amazed at the number of people involved in these projects, because I've read and heard more specifics about the Lake District project, for example, and the number of people involved, the number of communities involved, it's huge, and the number of organizations. So I don't know if anybody's tallied the amount of people in the UK that are actually now involved in one way or another in MBS, but I'm sure it would be interesting to know. I'm just wondering, all of these projects that have been assessed and are underway and really have adopted an MBS approach, how are they going to continue to measure their success going forward?
That's a great question, Leigh-Ann. And in terms of the data, this is obviously an ongoing task at hand, which we are continuing to develop this kind of deeper database now. So just, generally there are currently 20 early assessments, all in different phases of completion, and they're in 16 countries globally. The majority of the pilots are self-assessments of ongoing interventions, but we're seeing already, of course, from these applications that the standard is applicable to a great diverse variety of interventions, both in terms of ecosystem, geography, and action type. I'll just say that from the added value already is very clear for the different users, in so much as in addition to the process itself, it's also that's very complementary to the outcome of the assessment now. So there's a lot of kind of reflection and internal kind of tweaking perhaps in terms of the ongoing interventions as well. So, we're looking at how the standard can be used to inform policy reform, suggesting therefore that it can be used for financial frameworks or strengthening company strategies as well. So lots of exciting areas for us to continue to delve into.
Well, thank you, James, very much. It's really fascinating, and I look forward to hearing more about the different early movers in the UK, especially. But it's interesting. You said 16 countries, I think, which is huge. Well, one thing that I think that also comes up as a question quite a bit is, how do we differentiate what's a high quality MBS? And of course, the global standard intends to help guide people in that direction. It's a facilitative standard that's trying to move people in that direction. But there's lots of work that's come up, lots of questions that have come up lately that whether IUCN should be moving towards an assurance program or a certification program. So my colleague Giulia Carbone is with us right now. And Giulia, it would be great if you could give us an update on some of the different options IUCN is exploring.
Yeah, thank you, Leigh-Ann. Thank you for the question. And I am really grateful for having been given the responsibility of exploring what are the options for an NBS certification system. The question is simple, but the answer is complex. And so this is why it's taking a little bit of time for IUCN to define what is the way forward. So first of all, we are looking at, so we have a very strong standard that has been developed according to, for those who are standards lovers, you know the IC codes, and the IUCN standard has really tried to follow the code. So it's a really strong in terms of has been developed with multi-stakeholder input through a number of consultations. But we know that the standard on its own, it's a very important part of the story. It's the beginning of the story, but it's not necessarily the whole story. Especially if you have a stakeholders group, such as, for example, business, usually that you want to make claims, which includes also using, for example, a label. There is a whole set of actions that need to be in place if you want to do that in a credible way. And this is the assurance system and the certification decision. So these are not simple steps, are very complex in terms of they need a number of procedures that at the moment we don't have yet, because we have developed only the standard and a system for self-assessment. But at the moment, the standard itself is not ready for being verified by a third party and decisions on certification being made. So this is what we are doing right now, because there are different ways of going, about that. There could be an IUCN standard where IUCN runs the entire process, or we could partner with other organizations and including other certification schemes. So right now we are assessing the pros and the cons of these two approaches, knowing that also we want to keep the opportunity for IUCN to continue deliver technical assistance to all stakeholders, including businesses, and it's something already we are doing. We also know that not all stakeholders might want to go through the certification, which we know very well, going through certification, getting a third party like an auditor to come and do the audit also it will cost something. So we need to make sure that we do it in a way that also those who don't want to go through certification are not excluded. So there are a number of questions that we are exploring. So I think that, as I said, the main two options are an fully IUCN process or something in partnerships with others. And this is because there are a number of considerations that we have made. One is that there are plenty of certification schemes out there, and these target either specific, let's say, sectors, such as, we have plenty of certification looking at mining or infrastructures, or certification focusing on specific commodities, such as, coffee or palm oil or soy and so on. So how are these certifications going to operate vis-a-vis to nature-based solutions? So that's actually the biggest point I'm currently really this week exploring with a number of colleagues, saying, okay, are they already looking into NBS? Some of them are. So how are we connecting? And actually out of these systems, the one that is probably more in everybody's mind right now is carbon certification and carbon credit. So as we know, the NBS, one of the societal challenges that has been identified that can be addressed by nature-based solutions is climate mitigation and adaptation. So from the business perspective, there has been a movement. Now my colleague Adriana will speak about that, about how can we use nature-based solutions for climate mitigation and offset, therefore. And there are a number of certification schemes that are already looking into this. So how are we going to work with these? So right now, unfortunately, I don't have an answer, but I can only say that we are really working on this. The plan is to have an answer by Congress. So it's actually 5 weeks from now. To be able to already socialize our views and our position in September, and then start working so that in the next few months we can already start looking into initial solutions for organizations that are interested in going through a process of certification.
Wow, this is really a lot. Since just 1 year launching the standard, it's gone quite quickly. And yeah. Giulia, can I just ask, is the demand there for this?
So the demand, certainly we have had a number of existing certification schemes that came to us, and some of them are also members of IUCN, or we cooperate, asking how can we work better together. From a business perspective, we are going to explore the demand also through these existing standards so that we can see also how it's more efficient from a perspective of a certificate holder. Is it to add another certificate or embed NBS in existing standards that look at other aspects? So we, the specifics of the demand are not really clear yet.
Yeah. Well, watch this space, and I guess
absolutely, yes,
there'll be plenty of opportunities at the IUCN Congress
yes.
In September to hopefully discuss this further with our immediate community who will be with us there anyway.
And let me just add, I mean, like for everything, one of the we see an opportunity out of certification because we want to use the standard in the in the most effective way to create an impact, a positive impact. But that means we need to also to have a system that is independent, that goes out and generates evidence that things have been done properly, and then there is an outcome, an impact of generated from these actions. And also we want to very clearly limit the loose use of the term nature-based solutions. And, this goes back to why the standard was developed. There was a request by members to develop first, define it, and the definition was developed, and then create a standard. So it's not a generic term anymore. Yeah. It's something very specific, and the certification schemes that will add to the standard and assurance in a certification will enable those who actually want to use the term to be supported by a system that will be very clear, saying, yes, you're doing it right, and avoid, just also greenwashing.
Yeah, well, that's important. I think it would be interesting now to hear from Adriana, who could maybe tell us a little bit more about the climate mitigation aspects. And also maybe if you could tell us, Adriana, where this is being discussed and what fora, and how we could see it being taken up in the future.
Yes, thank you, Leigh-Ann, and hello, everybody. Just to give you a quick background, so our starting point was the fact that MBS are increasingly recognized as a bridge that can provide solutions to address both the biodiversity and the climate change crisis. And as a union, we have explicitly supported the implementation of MBS across the board, including for mitigation, climate change mitigation and adaptation. So, as you know, the mitigation pathways and all the scientific pathways compatible with a 1.5 degrees world are saying that we need to have emissions by 2030 and achieve net zero emissions by 2050. So this will be achieved only if all economic sectors implement aggressive emission reductions strategies across their operations, including, of course, the sectors with a direct and indirect impact on land use and natural resources. For this, IUCN is aiming to expand the application of the MBS standard in partnership with businesses to find the best way to implement MBS that result in emission reductions from within their operations and supply chains. Now, the other side of the coin is the topic of offset programs, whether it's compliance or voluntary markets that trade carbon offsets from the land use sector, for instance, the ones generated through reforestation, afforestation, or other land-based activities. There is a growing investment from companies, particularly to invest in carbon offsets to cover for the emissions they can't reduce. And on the other hand, at the more official level, parties still need to discuss the use of these offsets under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. So, as you're hearing, there is a lot of discussion and a range of views regarding the use of nature-based solutions for carbon offsetting. Some views supportive and some that look at this with concern. Now, IUCN is a pioneer in the establishment of the NBS standard, and responding to this role to our role in influencing international policy across the Rio Conventions and supporting government and non-state actors, we are well positioned to play a role and contribute to these discussions. Not only to discussions, but also how decisions are made, ensuring that activities that self-identify as nature-based solutions, in fact, do not detract efforts and commitments to reduce emissions. Because of IUCN's nature of a union with multi-representation, we are turning to our membership and solicit views and feedback for us to shape a comprehensive position on the use of nature-based solutions for carbon offsetting. So at the moment, we're running a consultation process with our members and commissions. This started back in June and will continue through September, where at the World Conservation Congress, we will have the chance to engage with additional members and partners in meetings and events on this topic, which will set us for action at COP26.
Wow. Okay, well, that's a lot. That's a lot, and so. When do you expect? You said for COP26, IUCN hopes to have a position ready. Is that right?
Yes, correct. So this consultation process for IUCN membership will position IUCN to have a well-shaped strategy and elements to offer at COP26 for both countries and businesses. IUCN will host a nature pavilion in the Blue Zone in Glasgow. So we're hoping that creates the ideal space for discussions and exchanges. And looking beyond 2021, IUCN is also contributing to building the blocks of next COP to take place in Africa, where we are bringing NBS from the resilience and adaptation perspectives.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Well, one of the things that you said, I mean, is that everyone has to play a role in the end, huh? So it's going to take everybody coming on board, and these are very controversial and challenging issues because there's not always a straight way forward, shall we say? But just on the point of getting everybody on board, I was wondering, Radhika, maybe if I could just turn to you for a moment and talk about how IUCN is helping to build the capacity needed to deal with all of these issues, because there's not one aspect, every situation is different. So how is IUCN reaching out to its members or to others in the communities where it works to bring them on board and build that capacity?
Sure. So I think there's just those two words, capacity building, there's so much packed in it. And you heard earlier that Emmanuelle was saying that the Commission on Ecosystem Management has been working a lot with building capacities of students so that we can get those capacities going in plugging the research gaps that we currently have. There are quite a few, and as we go forward with implementing the standard, surely there'll be more. We want to make sure there's an innovation part of it, testing NBS out in new frontiers that we haven't explored yet. So how do you build those research capacities around that? And a lot of that work has been spearheaded by the Commission on Ecosystem Management. On our side, within the Secretariat, we started with looking at providing knowledge transfer to certain groups that wanted to engage with us. So, for example, with the Danish government, working with about 30, 40 of their missions around the world, and as groups training them and helping introduce nature-based solutions to them. And that's been very useful in that first stop in their journey. Basic understanding of what it is, a very quick snapshot of what the standard entails. And that helps to get the ball rolling in terms of engaging with the interest that a government or an NGO or a company may have, and then helping them to see where it is their interest lies in moving forward further. And of course, there's also 7 societal challenges. So capacity building is also not just who we're building the capacity of, but what is that societal challenge that people are more interested in, whether it's climate change adaptation and mitigation, disaster risk reduction, the other 5 being food security, water security, human health, socioeconomic development, and then reversing degradation itself. So you can already look at like maybe 7 different angles and packages aspects of capacity building when you start looking at how to focus the knowledge transfer to specific sectors. So we've done a lot of work around building group capacities. But what we're starting to see, or what we started seeing in the last few months, is this risk of co-opting NBS and putting a tag on existing skills at an individual level. So, you know, if people are putting their own titles, self-titles of nature-based solutions, and without having engaged in the definition, that just makes it a little bit more complex in terms of keeping the focus on something that, as Giulia said, is no longer new language. It has a definition, it has growing technical literature on it, it has a standard on it. So instead of criticizing or being averse to that, how does IUCN respond to that has been our approach, because we are the custodians right now of the technicality of NBS, and we want to make sure that we bring people along in this process if they're going to assume the role of a leadership role or a technical role in their jobs on nature-based solutions. So having moved from, or having built capacities in groups, bringing out that social learning aspect, helping each other understand around the same table what NBS can mean to them, albeit in different ways, we are now moving to building actual individual capacities. But building those individual capacities has to really be embedded in the recognition of it. Recognition in terms of how do we credit an individual for having that level of knowledge, but how do we also get it recognized in that bigger world of academia? So that's what IUCN has been working on recently in rolling out this capacity development at individual level through IUCN's Academy. So professional certification or professional certificate on nature-based solutions. And the first round, we're doing, the first round of training starts on the 3rd of August. We still have a few seats left. It's been an incredibly positive response to this certificate, the professional certificate, but we still have spaces. We have scholarships for low-income countries. We also have a 30% discount, given this is the first time we are running this training, and we want to be inclusive, and we want a lot of different minds around this table so that it also helps us bring robustness into this professional certificate. And we're going to be running this training for 5 weeks. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4-hour sessions for 5 weeks. And there's so altogether, there's 40 contact hours, but there's assignments and assessment processes built into it. And why we're taking our time to actually set this up properly is because we're also starting to talk to some potential partner universities. How can then this lead into a bigger academic qualification for people to become NBS professionals, rather than just, you know, renaming their professional grades or their roles that they currently have. So it is our responsibility to have put this concept and this really promising standard out there to now bring along technical capacities of people, whether it's from the private sector, whether it's from the government, whether it's from academia, to really understand and move forward together. So that's a big piece of work that's going on, looking at different universities who can actually help then move this into a proper professionalized area of qualification that people can go into diplomas, degrees, etc. That's down the line. But going back to the group trainings, Leigh-Ann, as you said, we recently, in March, we trained about 41 of our state members. IUCN is an intergovernmental organization, so we have 91 countries that are actually our state members who also are part of the adoption process of the standard as well as the definition. So we're trying to engage them and build their capacities. But it's been quite an interesting and complex process, because if you look at NBS, it can't necessarily sit with one ministry or the other. So you really need a national level drive for this, because you're looking at water, you're looking at forests, you're looking at climate, you're looking at the whole range of development issues people face. And many of these issues have different mandates in different ministries. So with the 41 governments we trained, I think we had at least 2 or 3 ministries from different countries joining us for this training. And it was quite intense because we had to do it all online. It was a 2-day rolling training. And at the end of the day, the ministry colleagues became friends with themselves because they didn't really get an opportunity to necessarily know each other back in their own capitals. So we're also trying to help our government state members break down the silos that may exist most often unintentionally. How do they start sharing data? How do they start sharing mandates across the different ministries? And how do they help us move forward on a national level agenda? And part of that also has been, how does that then plug into the national recovery plans? So how do we build capacities fast enough for these governments where they can see how NBS can fit with the national recovery plans and help us get back on track post-COVID? So that's also a big piece of ongoing work of bringing different ministries together from the same governments to really understand where and how all of them can be part of that puzzle that ends up neatly joining together and taking NBS to scale. So lots of work going on, lots of exciting work.
Well, just building on that, I mean, now looking forward, maybe, can you just tell all of us a little bit about the facility that's underway, and in particular, just building on what you were just saying, what's the difference between the professional certificate and the technical assistance that you're hoping to provide to governments and others, I imagine, going forward? Can you talk a little bit about how you envision that IUCN will play a role in that aspect?
Sure. So you mentioned the facility. So we are in the process of setting up and expanding our own capacities to be able to respond to the demand, the huge demand we created since we actually launched the standard. And we need to be sure in-house IUCN can actually respond to it. For that basis, we're actually setting up, or we're upscaling our own capacities in a way, and calling it the NBS facility, bringing on board more colleagues and making sure that we have a more professionalized way of providing these services around the world, and the same kind of services no matter where in the world we are operating on NBS. So part of that facility, and if you want to hear more about it, you must join us in Marseille. We're going to talk a lot about the Nature-Based Solutions Global Facility at our Congress in Marseille, which, as Giulia mentioned and Leigh-Ann also mentioned, is happening in September. So the idea is to set ourselves up to help people with technical assistance. Just because we've run a 2-day training, either at a group level or at an individual level, doesn't mean people then have that autonomy to move forward. They may become very proactive in being able to see opportunities and unlock those doors, but walking through the doors and really capitalizing on the opportunity of nature-based solutions, the potential of nature-based solution, requires a bit of, holding each other's hands. IUCN's learning how to provide those technical capacities by interacting with you, and you still perhaps need us along that journey to get to a point of really going, right, this XYZ nature-based solution is in full adherence with the standard. So the facility is going to help with things like, that first contact point around the world, who to go to if you're interested in the standard or understanding the concept. The facility is also going to help us then unlock those first discussions of how does it fit? Is there a better solution perhaps, and nature-based solution is not the solution for that particular site or context? So moving along on that journey of learning together, but shifting from sitting around the table and understanding it to doing it and learning, and from learning, improving what we do. And that also touches upon the technical assistance we're going to need if people want to look at assurance and certification that Giulia just spoke about. How do we provide that technical assistance for somebody to get to a point to want to be certified against whatever that certification scheme is? So the facility will look at that. A huge component of the facility is helping build those capacities, but also not be reactive and responsive, rather proactively look at what we call a policy enabler part. What are those current policy gaps or blocks that we can unlock so we can really converge around nature-based solutions rather than simply seeking sectoral alignment? Alignment's great, but it may end up with small-scale pet projects. What we want is a convergence of policy so you can really have nationally driven agenda. And then finance catalyst. We can sit here and talk all about this, but how do we fund it? How do we pay for it? We can't necessarily get there on charity and the goodwill of taxpayers. We need to make sure there's investments, there's financing mobilized from the private sector side as well. How do we unlock those doors to make sure the funding comes in? And then the third part of the facility really is, it's my favorite part, if I can say, the knowledge and innovation hub.
Mhm.
Like I said, the capacity building, what are we learning? How do we bring on new actors to challenge us to do even better? How do we innovate around nature-based solutions? So these are the three pillars of the facility: the knowledge and innovation hub, the policy enabler, and the finance catalyst. And part of that is also making sure NBS is accessible to everybody, not just those who can afford it. So how do we create grants and non-grants mechanisms to bring NBS to communities, to engage our indigenous people who are the first ever NBS creators, you know, to bring their knowledge in and get them to steer us in the right direction. So again, a lot happening around the facility as well. And we're going to be talking a lot about it at the Nature-Based Solutions Pavilion in Marseille at the IUCN Congress.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. I just wonder, going back, if James is still on the line there, if we could just ask him a question. When with the pilots in the UK, in particular, the early movers, how much technical assistance or hand-holding, if you want, for a lack of a better term, has IUCN had to do with the partners on the ground? And how much has IUCN also gained from that process of undertaking the self-assessments with our partners there?
Thanks, Leigh-Ann. That's a great question. So we have, like I said, we've been working through the future funding program and the strategic catchment partnerships of the Environment Agency. So we've been working with them and through them in order to, develop this process. We're able to roll out and scale a little bit the adoption of the standard with the self-assessment process. I would say we've channeled a lot of that training capacity through our colleagues within the Environment Agency, and we've developed a series of training sessions, capacity building sessions. And it very much depends on the needs that exist within that specific project that we're working and supporting those. So I would say, in this specific 5 examples in the UK, they're all quite benchmarked at a level where I think the capacity is already very strong. So it's actually been a very mutually beneficial and very engaging, dynamic relationship so far. Obviously, the very first in-depth assessment process in Colombia back in last year was a very, very deep learning curve for all of us, because, of course, we are supporting these early assessments to also for IUCN to incorporate that learning from the process more than the result itself. And that's, I think, a very valuable exercise, something that we are relishing at the moment, and obviously trying to strengthen wherever possible that feedback that we can garner and incorporate into the assessment tool, into the process that we're supporting as well.
Okay, well, thank you, James. And Emmanuelle, I guess I would just also be interested to know, going forward, how with the governance structure and everything, how IUCN and the Commission in particular are going to be able to take this learning forward in your research. Are you still there, Emmanuelle? Did we lose
Yes,
you?
I am.
Okay, good, thank you.
Well, as I said earlier, I think that it was interesting to hear James at the moment. I've also helped supporting one project that happened in the Mediterranean, and there was the regional office of the IUCN regional office in Malaga was also involved in this, and it was really interesting to see how the different projects that were some of them were more conservation-like projects, and some were more small businesses, used and understood the self-assessment tool, the global standard, in different ways, and struggled with understanding some of the criteria differently, the indicators differently, and it was really an interesting and learning process, both for them and for us. And what we found out, from them, from the feedback that we've received from those users, was that it wasn't not only an interesting tool for them to use, but not only just to self-assess, but also to improve their initiative, their project as they were using the standard. So that was really interesting. And I think that, again, as I mentioned earlier, I think that the feedback that we'll be receiving, both from the regional and national offices with people that are piloting the standard, and from the users themselves, and that community of practice that has been mentioned mentioned earlier will really help us target and identify exactly what are the research priorities that we want to focus on beside or in addition to the ones that we're already working on.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, I think I'm also interested to see, I mean, MBS has multiple benefits, and the self-assessment, undertaking the self-assessment seems to have multiple benefits, if I can say, for both the users and I think for IUCN, who's learning as we go. So it's interesting. Giulia, how do you think this applies to the standard? Because certainly if we go for assurance or more specifically for certification, people will have to be trained.
Yeah, so definitely there will be a different type of training, I think, that will be needed. First is I think a key element of every certification is that you have to guarantee that the assurance, that means the auditors go out in any part of the world and conduct the audits in the same way. That's an issue of fairness. And so that means that we will have to train these auditors, and they are generally from, companies that do that for a living, but they don't necessarily know the NBS. So there will have to be a training specific to the auditors so that they understand the specific content. And as Radhika said, the standard is not just for one type of issue. It's 7 challenges, and each of these challenges opens up for a big number of different areas that can be addressed by the certification. So there's going to be a lot of training that has to be developed for the auditors. And then of course the project holders themselves generally they want to understand better what it means in order to be able to set up a project that has a high chance to be certified. So the capacity building is going to be critical, but definitely will have to be differentiated by type of target audience. Auditors are a different type of audience than a certification holder, or even companies. I can imagine there are going to be a lot of people, a lot of organizations that don't necessarily want to go for certification, but they're still interested, and that will require maybe a different type of training.
Well, there's a lot going on,
yes,
and a lot to look forward this coming year. Adriana, I just want to give you a chance to say what your one more word on perhaps on the climate COP, because I'm just curious from a policy perspective. Radhika started to touch on that, but many governments have put MBS in their national plans already. Can you tell me what is the likelihood of that being scaled up at this climate COP and going forward? And I think to me, it's fascinating, because I think if there is some sort of certification program going forward, do you see governments adopting that or, signing up to that as one way to meet all the climate targets?
I believe that for this COP, in addition of the official agenda that needs to be discussed, including the items under Article 6, what we are seeing now is the amazing force behind non-state actors who are sending clear signals to governments about investment in nature-based solutions and how to really transform economic systems, operations, including at the national level to see a scaling up of nature-based solutions. So beyond the specific topic that I was referring before, which is climate change mitigation and use of nature-based solutions for mitigation, nature-based solutions is seen at the UNFCCC and at the COP, particularly coming up as one of the key themes or pillars of action to accelerate climate action. As a matter of fact, the COP presidency has as one of his topics the topic of nature as one of the things that will be discussed by decision makers at the highest levels, how to think of solutions that puts us in a 1.5 world, considering all the benefits for mitigation and adaptation. So we are really hopeful that the COP26 will be a key place to see scaling up of MBS, whether it's you know, at the political level and you know, with the intervention of non-state actors.
That's great. Well, I think there is a lot of movement, as everyone's referred to, from business and other non-state actors as well, championing MBS, which is great. So I'm feeling very hopeful. This is an anniversary event. We should all be I think, feel very proud of what's been achieved this past year, and not overwhelmed by what we still need to do. But I think, you know, it takes everybody working together. So hopefully we can do that. But before I say thank you to our panelists, I would like, Radhika, for you to have the final word, please, to maybe wrap us up here and looking forward to what you see coming up.
Sure. Surely, and I'm sorry I'm speaking so much, but you keep asking me. So maybe three quick things. One is, I think we, as those of us who work in the conservation sector, we need to be very, very clear that our role is so important here. Essentially, what nature-based solutions is more use of our ecosystems, but in a way that is sustainable, in a way that we are not setting the solutions up which will become problems tomorrow. So our role, our expertise, our decades of experience is even more pertinent. It doesn't make us all generalists. It actually makes our work more critical to get this right. However, unless NBS goes beyond the conservation community, it will not realize its value. So it is a solution to a problem, a sustainable development problem. So very much moving this, how conservation that has worked for decades for the planet can also work for people, is that underlying philosophy and that underlying intent of it. So we really need to, as the custodians of NBS, we need to start reaching out to the sectors well beyond our own. We need to start thinking of those we may have never thought of engaging with. So all of us, our plea to you is reach out to different sectors within your ministries, within your companies, within your sphere of operation, to really connect with people who may not necessarily think about nature when they wake up in the morning. And then the second thing is engage with us. We have 55 offices around the world. We want NBS to become the new business as usual around the world. So engage with us. We aspire to respond to every single email we receive. So please reach out to us and connect with us so you can see how you can actually be part of this amazing movement that NBS has now created. And thirdly, just to thank all of you on a Friday, taking out your time. I'm sure Leigh-Ann will express IUCN's gratitude, but to thank you all to just joining us. And if this is the first time you're hearing about IUCN or NBS, please connect with us. Please tell your friends, but really appreciate that you've connected with us. And this is our commitment to you, our transparency to you, that we'll try and do this every year from now on. Thank you, Leigh-Ann.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I just mentioned there's also the Geneva dialogues that are going on, which are sort of what you're talking about. You're doing MBS in health, MBS in labor, yes. And it's exploring all the different aspects of how nature-based solutions can be taken up. And those dialogues are running through at least December this year. So you can watch out for those opportunities to join those webinars with experts as well. You can go to the IUCN.org website, and on the MBS events page, you'll see that they're always publicized there for you to sign up if you're interested. So I just quickly say thank you to all my colleagues. I always learn a lot from these sessions, so I appreciate you taking the time to update us, and also for everybody tuning in to celebrate, and also to Daisy and Linda behind the scenes helping us. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to working with you going forward. Have a great day.